Hello guys, welcome back. So till now we've seen how to develop a front-end with React.js. Now let's dive deep into how to develop a backend with Spring Boot framework. And for that, we'll have to initial our project first. Let me quickly tell you how to initialize your project. Go to Start, there you'll find Spring Initializer. Here you can choose your project type, whether you want a Maven project or a Gradle project. Then you choose your language and you can choose your Spring Boot version here. I'm choosing 2.4.2. You can choose any of the versions present. And coming to the project metadata, you can give your company name as your group name and artifact name as your project name. So I'm giving employee backend. So the package name for your project will be this, and the packaging will be jar, and the Java version I'm choosing 8. And you can add your dependencies here. And for I'm adding Spring Web, and I'll be adding SQL. These are the dependencies you'll be using in your project. And if you forget to add any of the dependencies here, you can add it in pom.xml, which is present in your project. So as of now, I'm adding just these two, but deep into the project, you'll know what all dependencies are required for this. And after adding, we generate it. That is it with the generation of the project. Now let's look into the code. Yeah, so let us first quickly look into our project structure. So we have our pom.xml here and we also have our front end. So if you followed up our previous video, you know how we developed our front end in React.js. Now we have our pom.xml project object model. So here are the dependencies which we've imported when we initialized our project. So we have our SQL, we have our Spring starter web, we have our SQL connector, we have our starter test. So these are all the things we need for our application to be running. And we also have to install node and npm for React to run on our backend. So that is how we are doing here. We are initializing it in the execution tag. We are giving the id and setting up the goal to install our node and npm, and then we install it and then we run our front end from here. So this is how it is done. So make sure all your configurations are right here and all your dependencies are included, especially the connector MySQL connector. So that is it with the pom.xml. Next, we'll look into our application.properties. Application.properties is where we define our database. We give the credentials of our database. So this is our data source URL, our local host, the default port number, and our database name. Here is our username. Okay, so let us now look into the main part of our project. In the SRC folder, we'll have a main. Go to that, click on Java, and there we have a package name, we have a controller, we have a DAO, we have a model and a service. So what exactly a controller does? Controller is where we try to perform requests, get and post. That is where we try to link it to the service and see how see how it tries to connect and retrieve the data from the database. So then we have our DAO. DAO is data access model. So what exactly it does is it acts as an interface, abstract interface to any kind of database. So here we are using SQL. So it acts as an interface to SQL. And what I by and it does it by mapping application calls to persistence layer. The DAO provides some specific data operations without actually exposing the details to database. So that is it with the DAO, and we have a model here. Model is where we define our objects and try to call our database. So we retrieve the data from there, and we also try to send it through model. And we have a service. Well, look how service and controller work hand in hand, and that is it with the structure. And now let us look closely with each and every part of a project. So we have a controller here, employee controller. Here in this controller, we are importing all the annotations we are using. Those are all automatically imported. uh, we have our we've created an object. We've Yeah. So we've created our object here, and we are performing get mapping and post mapping. So these are the URIs. If you remember in the front end, we mentioned this URI. So this is how it gets linked to it. What exactly we are doing here? So we are creating an employee list, and we are trying to get the data from there. So where is the data? We mentioned just get method here. So where is the data coming from? So that is where we are returning employee service. Employee service dot get. From where is the employee service coming? So we'll have to look into our service. So we also created a service file employee service dot java. We've And we also have few properties like Spring JPA Hibernate for our application to be running smoothly. We also give the port number as 8888, but the default port number, if you don't mention this, by default it will be taking 8080. So that is it with the application dot properties. We are creating a list called employee, and we are trying to get it. From where we are trying to get it? It is returning from employee service. So we look into employee service. What are we trying to get? So when we go to employee service, we've created an interface called employee service, and here we are trying to get the list of employees using get method. So that is returned back to the controller here and mapped into API employee. The same goes with all the mapping functionalities we've used here in our program. So the one is post mapping, where we try to save our data which we entered. So here we are using employee service.save employee. So again, going back to employee service save, so we've already created one void method saying save employee. So this is how we are saving our data. So this is how our service works, and be it the functionality of receiving the data, be it the function of saving the data or just viewing the data, all is done through controller over here. So I hope that is clear as of now. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe to our YouTube channel.